So we've finished Fisher-Gray, and I'm sure you're all very happy to hear that. That was something completely new, a new way of thinking of things, way more math than most of you cared for, I'm guessing. And of course, you're still learning it, right? You're just getting the problems now. And so there'll be another set of problems as well for you guys to go over. But we're done with it in terms of the lectures. So we're done with that. And there's a number of ways we could go with the course. And I've talked to my colleagues, and there's some stuff that they would like you guys to have learned in this class so that they can assume you know it for next class. So we're going to do that. In particular, we're going to go back to some of the stuff we had last year and then put it all together into what's known as the ISLM model. So this is a model that incorporates all the short run stuff from last year into one model that you can kind of think about it as all together. And this is an important model in the sense that it's not really at the forefront of knowledge these days, but it's something that everyone goes back to. It's a model that is not right in a lot of ways, but keeps giving the right answers. So everybody will draw one on an ISLM model on their napkin to figure out what the answer is, and then justify the answer with something more clever, right? So I find myself too loud. I don't know about you. I'm going to fix this. Okay, maybe that's better. Maybe not. Who can know? It's a mystery. So what I want to start out today with is I've also talked to a number of students, and there's as always, there's bits and pieces missing from people's education, and which is always the case. But one of the things that I've found is missing from people's education is an understanding of the bond market. So we're going to start out talking about how the bond market works. And this is important because we keep talking about interest rates. So we're going to be talking about interest rates in the ISLM model quite extensively. So it's important to know what interest rates are now that you're a second-year student, right? And so what I'm going to do to start this out is I'm going to sell this piece of paper. I know you can't read the piece of paper, but this is the piece of paper here. It's not big, but it's this piece of paper. This is the piece of paper. And you can tell it's important because it's got a border on it, and a border makes it so much more official. It doesn't, unfortunately, have embossed paper, but you know, it's got a border, so I'm just saying. Okay. So I'm going to sell this, and clearly, if you read this, it's a promise from me to whoever owns this piece of paper. I am promising that I'm going to give you cash money. Okay? Now, I don't know if you trust me or not. If you have any sense, not so much, but it's a promise, right? Maybe it has some value. And my problem today is I didn't bring any money for lunch and forgot my card. I have no way to buy a sandwich, and so I need to come up with some cash for a sandwich. And my clever plan is to sell this piece of paper. And by selling this piece of paper, I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to buy lunch. Okay? Everyone get the deal? And I'm actually selling this. I'm actually selling it for cash money. And I'm actually promising to pay the money as it goes along. So you'll get €1 on Friday, €1 on Wednesday, and then €10 as well on Wednesday. So €11 on Wednesday, €1 on Friday. Okay? If you believe me. I don't know if you do or you don't. Okay? So, who would like this piece of paper? And how much? How much? $365. I think she's at her budget constraint. $365. I have a bid for $365. Yes?
€13.
13.
We got like €12 back, and then €1 is the cost of enjoying having piece of paper.
Enjoying the piece of paper. You're just ruining the whole thing, but I will take your €13. Actually, I won't, because I actually want to teach something. So I'm not going to be able to do that bit. So I'm going to take you as an untrustworthy buyer, and I'm going to exclude you from the thing. It's a nice offer, and I would love the money. I honestly would, but I'm going to get it for reasons of education. Like, I don't know what has happened to me in my life that I'm putting education in front of money. What kind of economist am I anyway? But I'm going to exclude that. So I'm at $365. Anyone willing to do better than $365? What's that? I unfortunately do not. Okay. Sold to the buyer for $365. Oh, I could have had so much more. Oh, what a sucker. So this is yours. And can I ask you to bring it on Friday?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I've got $365. So the first thing we notice is, okay, I'm not being mercenary the way I'm supposed to be according to economic theories, and that's obviously a thing. But we also notice that I could have done better if I took Revolut, right? Yeah, this is a thing. So, what is this thing that I sold? This thing that I sold, as you might have guessed, is a bond. It's not like a bond. It's not kind of evocative of a bond. It is a bond. This is what a bond is. It's somebody wants cash now. They don't have lunch. They want to buy a factory. They want to take all the executives to Hawaii, whatever. They want cash now. They don't got it. And they're borrowing it, right? Just like I borrowed $365. Okay? And so I've written this bond in kind of the way that bonds are normally written, but a bond is just an IOU. So the Irish government routinely issues bonds. That is, they borrow money. Pretty much every government on earth borrows money, and this is the way they do it. They don't go to the bank and ask for a loan. They say, here's a slip of paper, an IOU with these features. How much will you give me for it? Okay? Now, obviously, they don't reject the 13-euro offers, but they could do. And they just see how much people are willing to pay for it, right? Okay. Now, this bond has a number of features, and one of the troubles with the bond market is that it is super jargon heavy. It's all, frat boys and stuff that are running the bond market. And so they all like to talk in cool lingo and whatnot. And so they got their whole world of specialized jargon, just like, economists do. It's fair enough. But there's lots and lots of it. And so if you're new to the bond market and you read about it, you're totally lost because it's jargon, 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 jargon. But all the features are here. Okay? So this bit, this is the face value, not farce value, face value. Face value of the bond, that's how much it's going to pay at the end. Okay? And they could put anything on them, but there's certain conventions. And the usual convention is the face value is 10,000 euros or dollars or whatever. But they could put anything. They could put 5,326 there. They could put anything, but there's conventions. Convention is 10,000. Okay? Which means that if you want to buy a bond, which you can do, but 15 minutes after class, you can go and buy an IBM bond where IBM is borrowing money, or an Irish government bond, or whatever kind of bond you want. You can buy it, get an IOU from the Irish government, so they owe you money instead of the other way around, how we're used to. You can do that 15 minutes after class. You can be done. You can do it online. But since 10,000 is the normal number, you're going to need a bit of cash to do it, right? You're not going to be able to buy one for 5 euros because you're going to be getting paid 10,000 euros at some point, right? But that's just the amount that you're going to get paid back. Could be anything. In practice, it's always 10,000. Okay. These guys here are coupon payments. They're paying a certain amount each and every, usually it's year, but it could be anything. Usually every year they pay you a certain amount. Here, because I don't want to be tracking you down sometime, like I didn't do it every day. I wanted to just meet you on Friday and that's easy. So I did coupon payments every class day. But in principle, and typically it would be yearly, you'd get a certain amount each time. Okay? And then we have the price. In this case, the price of the bond is $365. That's how much I could get for it because, first of all, I'm a sucker not taking the 13. Secondly, I didn't take Revolut. And thirdly, nobody has cash now. Fourthly, I can't be trusted, right? And so, but you put all these things together and no one's going to pay too much for this promise. Like if I was a trustworthy person, probably I could get better, right? I could get 8, 9, 10 euros. But no, my reputation precedes me, and so I'm not gonna get very much. In fact, I didn't quite get enough to buy a sandwich. Maybe I can get a sandwich. If I go to the right place, I get a sandwich, right? I can get something. Maybe, yeah. I don't know. I can get something, right? Maybe, no, nothing. A cookie? No. I'm screwed. Still hungry. Anyway, what can you do? What can you do? Some people, untrustworthy, they don't get to eat. Right? This is everything that's going on in the bond market. Now, like this is, what's the jargon for this? I even forgot the jargon. Right here we've got 1 week to maturity. Right, so the date of maturity is when they're going to pay you the face value. Right? At some point, they're going to pay you the amount that they promised to pay you, and that's the date of maturity. And then we can say, how long is that bond? Right? How long is it from now until you get paid off? And they got different jargons for each length of maturity, and I don't know them. I don't care to know them, but just to give you an idea, like between 1 and 5 years is a gilt, or maybe not, I don't know. But they got jargon like gilts and bunts and bonds, and depending on the length of maturity, right? Which means as you're reading this stuff, it sounds completely like, oh, that's a whole different thing, but they're all the same thing. They're all just an IOU. They all look like this, okay? Mine is 1 week to maturity, okay? And that's all we got. So what could I have done to get more money, right? How could I have gotten more than 365? Because clearly I wanted more than 365, right? Obviously I didn't want 13, but otherwise 9 or 10 would have been 1 year. 1 year I got 9 and I was so happy. Like, it was great, but not this year. Not this year. You know me better than them. And so I didn't get a very good price. What can you do? If I wanted to get a better price, I could have, for example, told you ahead of time that I was going to do this. Right? If I had told you last week, then maybe you'd bring a little cash and then I'd get a little competition going. But I didn't, and nobody has cash anymore. The sum total of all the change in the room is 365, and I got it now. It's just not a thing anymore, and so it's very hard to sell these bonds. Makes it difficult for me to get it, right? Now, if we take this to a country or a company, they will let people know that they're going to be doing this. So we're saying, Irish government's going to be issuing a bunch of bonds. I really actually, I'm a big insurance company. I've got a bunch of my money in say, French bonds. But, it's France. Maybe they pay, maybe they don't. I don't know. I would like to diversify and have a little bit in Irish bonds as well. And I can organize my portfolio so that I'm ready to buy, 100 billion in Irish bonds or whatever they're issuing. Right? And so they will let you know ahead of time for just exactly the same reason that I should have let you guys know ahead of time before doing this. Right? You'll get a better price if people are ready to buy. Right? Now, it seems very different, but it is in fact exactly the same. An insurance company buying it, you and me buying it, it's exactly the same thing. Right? Okay. Now, in principle, they could put any face value, they could put any length of maturity, they could put any coupon payments they wanted in there, and that would be fine, right? In practice, there's conventions. And the conventions in practice are that you don't just put, I'm going to have the maturity be 8 months and 7 days. Well, maybe that's when you want to pay it back, but nobody wants to figure out what your dumb 8 months, 7 days is. They want to have it comparable to other things. And so they say, usually you buy either a 1 month bond, 3 month bond, 6 month bonds, or more likely a 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, 20 year bond. These sort of this set amounts. And you can, if you're doing long-term borrowing, you can borrow for 20 years by issuing a 20-year bond. You can borrow for 5 years. It's up to you, right, as you write the bond, right? And partly it's how long do you want to borrow the money for, and partly it's how do you think the market will bear that right now. You get an expert in the bond market to say, look, these days everyone wants 5-year bonds. They don't really want the 10-year bonds. They think something weird is going to happen in 8 years, and so they don't want to get involved in that craziness. And so everyone's going for 5 years, so you issue 5-year bonds because you think you get a better price that way. Okay? But up to you. But there's certain maturities that are just standard, and by convention, nobody chooses anything else. Nobody does this 1 week silliness, right? Secondly, it's not like anyone can issue a bond. Well, anyone can, like I just did. You can yourself, right? You can do it anytime you want. But you're not going to be able to take it to the big bond market or anything and have insurance companies bid on it. Believe me, I've tried. Like the 365 is ridiculous. I could do better. But sadly, no, I don't have access to that market. You need to be kind of a big entity. So big companies do it. Big companies do it, and governments do it. Okay? Sometimes local governments do it, like in the US, a lot of cities will issue bonds. I think the political structure here doesn't allow Dublin to issue bonds, as far as I understand, but they could do, right? There's nothing preventing them other than, the law. But municipalities or states will issue bonds. Anyone who's sort of big enough to be worthwhile for a big investor to investigate. Right? If I'm issuing a bond, nobody wants to investigate me. First of all, it's a sad case. And secondly, it's a waste of time because I'm not going to have a high enough volume in the market to be worth the while. But if you're a big enough player, big companies, you can go into the bond market. So if you're a big company, for example, if you're IBM, you can say, we really could use some cash. I would like to build a factory and also take all the executives out for shrimp cocktail. And so to do this, I need some cash. I would like to borrow the money. And you've got choices, right? You can either go to a bank and borrow the money, or you can issue a bond and borrow the money. Right? Or you can go to anyone else and say, hey, Hewlett Packard, you give us a little cash. And maybe they do, right? But you're borrowing money from Hewlett Packard. So you can borrow the money either from a bank like we're used to, or you can borrow money on the bond market. It's kind of the same thing. But if you're a smaller company or you're an individual, you don't have the bond market option, right? You just have banking system option, which is one of the reasons why we think the banking system is very important for medium and small businesses, more so than big businesses. So this supporting the banking system, it's nice for big businesses. Obviously, it's lovely for big banks, but for non-banking businesses, it's nice to have a good, well-working banking system. But for medium and small businesses, that is actually crucial, right? They can't borrow money anywhere else except the banking system. And mafia, but that's a whole other problem. Okay. All right. So if I'm going to issue a bond, I'll pick one of the maturity dates that are sort of normal. Let's say I pick a year. Pick a year bond, and I'm saying, then, let's say I do 10 years. 10 years is easier. I do a 10-year bond. The convention is it's going to be for 10,000 euros. Okay, so those are picked for me. Its face value is going to be 10,000, and it's going to be 10 years. And the convention is, I could set any coupon payments I want. I could set 0, I could give them $100 a month, 100 months a year, whatever. But the convention is that we try to set the coupon payments so that are just equal to the interest rate. That is, we want all the profit from holding this bond to be these coupon payments. And so we're trying to do it so that the value of the bond to the investor is, I give them some money, I get these coupon payments over the time. At the end, I get the 10,000 euros. What is the value of that? Well, the value of that, we set the coupon payments to try to make the value of that 10,000 euros. So usually buying a bond, just because of conventions, not because of anything intrinsic to the bond market, but usually because of conventions, the price of a bond will be just about 10,000 euros when it's first issued. Right? Because all of the benefit is going to come in the coupon payments, and then you're going to get your money back at the end. Right? Yeah?
Is this kind of financial?
Yeah. It all meshes together, Particularly macro gets involved in finance quite a bit because, all the interest rates affect investment, and we need to know the interest rates, right? So, but yeah, it would be in financial economics as well. Okay. So the convention is to set the coupon payments. So that's the nice thing about having a bond, and you just get your money back at the end. Now, of course, they can get this wrong, right? The people that are deciding how to write this slip of paper, they know a lot about the bond market. They have a good idea what the firms are like. Yeah.
What happens to the company that issues bonds with high interest?
You just lose your money.
Government doesn't issue.
Nope. Yeah, and so one of the things that we worry about is default, right? You could think Ivan just is not trustworthy at all First of all, he's likely to sleep through class. I know class is at 1 in the afternoon, but still he's likely to sleep through class. And so then he won't come, and then maybe I'll get my payment late. Maybe I won't get it at all. What if he gets fired? Then he won't show up to class. He's not going to go up to class to pay me my $10. Then where am I? Right? If I'm not trustworthy for any number of reasons, my personal character, my personal financial situation, my ability to, all this stuff, liquidity problems, you don't think I'm going to pay, and if I don't pay, you just don't get your money. Right? And that's that. Sorry for you, it sucks, but bad investment, what can you do? And this is a real problem. Right? You can think in particular this is a real problem when you're loaning to firms. Right? Some firms go under, they do. Then you're owed the money. What happens? Okay, like in actual practice. You loan a bunch of money to a firm, you bought a bond, right? And then they go under. Well, they have some assets, those go into receivership and those get paid off. And there's a list of people that they owe money to. They owe money to the workers, they owe money to the investors, they owe money to the banks, they owe money to everybody, right, at this stage. And so there's a list of who gets paid back first. And so in practice, you will get paid back a portion of what you, yeah.
Shareholders or the bondholders get paid first?
So in general, shareholders are owners, and so they're last in line. Right, so there's anything left over there. There's special rules, preferred stock versus non-preferred, but the general rule is you owe money to people, you pay that first, and then you take your profits. And if that profit is a loss, well, too bad for you, right? Right. So just to say how good I am at this, there are agencies that rate these bonds, right? Say, I don't know how good IBM is. Right? They've been around for a while, but I don't know how they're managed or what their financial situation is. I could research it, would be the smart thing to do. Or I could go to these rating agencies. And these rating agencies go around and they look at companies and they look at governments and they just try to figure out how likely it is that they're going to pay off their debts. And they put them in categories. So there's AAA bonds, which are very, very likely to pay back their debts. AA bonds, a little less so. C bonds, D bonds, good luck with that. And just trying to gauge how likely they are to pay back. Now you would think that governments would be very likely to pay back, but some are, some not so much, right? So for example, our first investment, me and my wife, first investment, we had a little bit of money. We said, okay, we're going to do some investment. We're going to be smart. We teach this stuff. We should do this stuff. We should go out. Let's buy, and we're very risk averse. Obviously, academics, we got no risk in our soul. And so we say, let's get something really safe. And so we buy a AAA bond, the best bond you can get. We get it, and that's our bond. No, we got it, but we put our $10,000 more or less down. We get our bond. Happy clams. The next week, on Newsweek magazine, the CEO of that company is being led away in handcuffs in an orange jumpsuit. He had robbed everything. And the value of the bond went from our $10,000 to, I think, $2,000 overnight. No, that did not work out. And what happened in the end with that is the whole thing, they were robbing the thing blind. It was a whole family that were just milking this company for all it was worth. And the rating agencies, they are what they are. There's a lot of cases, for example, in the crisis in 2007, where they go back and those guys were being paid off to rate things the way that they want. And they had cozy relationship, paid off. There wasn't money under the table, but they do other businesses, and they get, a company gives them lots of other businesses. They don't want to rate them badly, and you wash my back, I'll wash your back, kind of thing. And so take them with a grain of salt. They're just companies rating these guys, right? So they got their own incentives too, right? Anyway, the thing goes under, and what's going on there, why it's selling for $2,000, where it was the day before it was $10,000, was because it was being bought up by these vulture funds, right? Nobody wanted the thing. The company's bankrupt. We're last in line for all the debts. First, the truck drivers get paid off or what. No, it's never them. It's always the investment bankers get paid off, then the truck drivers. Yeah, anyway, but we were last in line. But the vulture funds came in and they're trying to buy these up. And so we sold them to a vulture fund and we got our money out and cried a little bit, and that was that. Now, in the end, those bonds did end up getting paid off. Not entirely, but I think it came like to $6,000 or something in the end. So the vulture funds made some money. They all got paid late. It was like a whole brouhaha and everything, but it would have been smart to stay in. Okay? ex post, but who knows at the time. Which is just to say that this trustworthiness is a real thing, right? It's not, it's all fun to make fun of like not trusting me, but obviously you shouldn't, but also don't trust the companies either. And the governments are the same way. Like normally you get into trouble with municipal governments, like a city is borrowing money and they run into financial troubles and they can't pay back their loans. Very often the central government comes in and bails them out. Like there's like a 6-month period where they're not paying the coupon payments and everyone's in freaking out, but eventually the central government comes in and says, don't do that again. Generally, but not always, right? There are cases where governments themselves don't pay back the money, right? So Peru ran into lots of debt in the early 90s, and they just stopped paying. We're not paying anymore, and that's that, right? Greece very recently thought about that. Right? They were in big debt in the early 2000s, and one option on the table for them was just to stop paying, just like you, right? And the thing about you and me, if we stop paying our debts, someone can call the cops and they can seize our assets. But if a country stops paying its debts, what you gonna do, right? It's not like you can go to war and take it, but that's gonna cost you more than the benefit. You got people dead and everything. It's not worth it usually. And so, nobody wants to invade Greece. And all the soldiers just go out in the sun and enjoy the beach, and it's very hard to get motivation in the troops. And so we don't want to do that. And so like that is an option. Now it has negative sides, right? Nobody wants to play with you after that. It's very hard to borrow money in the future if you want to. Lots of troubles with that. But you can do it, and the sky doesn't fall, right? Peru is still around. People still live there. They didn't clear out the people, and everyone's still there. They had some troubles for a few years, and then they came up with a compromise agreement where they paid back part of it, but not all of it. And it's a doable thing. It's not cost-free, but it's doable, right? And so you can't trust anybody, but people often pay back their debts, right? It's just an IOU, and it's got all the troubles loaning money to your cousin has, right? Other than, you're not going to piss off your aunt if you try to collect. But other than that, it's exactly the same thing. You're loaning money to some guy. Maybe they pay back, maybe they don't. Okay, so we set the coupon payments in general. Not, we didn't have to, but the general principle is to try to set them so that the face value is equal to, we have action? Yeah, we do. Okay. We try to set them so that the face value is equal to the price of the bond. Okay. Just a convention. But you do know, like if they issue a bond and the price comes out to $9,900, they got it wrong, right? Because they were trying to set the coupon payment so the price came out to $10,000, but actually people didn't value it as much as they thought they would. Okay? Sometimes it goes for a little more than $10,000, etc. Okay, now we got this. This is what happened. But this is not normally how we talk about them. Normally, we talk about bonds in terms of the interest rate. So let's talk about the interest rate. And I'm going to do a simple version because math is hard, especially with weeks. Is this going to work? Yes, okay. Yeah, now we got 2 pages. Good days, good days. Suppose there were no coupon payments. In this example, the coupon payments were €1 each 2 to 5 days, right? Normally, coupon payments are on a regular basis, and you have to take into account the coupon payments. But we're going to pretend like they're not there, just to give you the idea. And say, well, what is the rate of return on this bond? Putting to 0 just to make the math easy, simple, right? What is the rate of return? And this is going to be the interest rate. So what happens? We have I paid, well, I paid, someone paid $365 for the bond, and in a week, they're going to get, everything goes well, and I don't just run off to Jamaica or anything. If everything goes well, they're going to get 10 euros, ignoring the coupon payments, right? So the rate of return is oh man. Okay, we're going to try this. We're going to try this. They get 10 1 week later, God willing, and, or that, let me not say cost, let me say invested. Well, invested. Yeah, I'll say cost. The cost was $365 today. So we can think of this, and this is true, they have loaned me $365, and I am paying some interest on this $365, and my interest cost will be, the amount I have to pay back is 10. So clearly I'm paying a lot of interest. Like, what the heck? But anyway, so the rate of return, or what they get, is sort of 1 plus the interest rate is equal to 10, 3.65 divided by 3.65. So that's equal to what? Well, this is going to be horrific. 10 Oh, man. How do I get this in decimals? Oh. I don't know my calculator. Anyone got this? Yeah. 1.7 something. Something, 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 right? Thank you very much. Very helpful. Okay. So, it's about 70% interest. Right? Is that right? But this isn't how normally interest rates are calculated, right? This is not how it works. How it works is they do it on an annual basis. They say, what is the annual interest rate that I'm paying? And to do that, what we're thinking is, if you did this good of an investment every week, all year, what would you get at the end? Right? So the annual rate of return is going to be 1.7 to the power 52, because you did this 52 times. You got this 1.7 return times 1.7 times 1.7 times 1.7 times 1. So every week you do this investment getting the same rate of return. This is mythical. This is not actually happening, but you pretend like you do, and you're rolling it over. You take the money that you got out of this bond, you put it into another bond that you pretend like you could get at the same deal, and you do this over and over and over 52 times, and you see how much you got at the end. So this is not going to be pleasant. Yeah, equals 3.19 times 10 to the 12th. So the interest return on this is in the billions of percent. Like, oh my God. But it is, it's huge. Right? Because you're getting this great deal in a week, you're tripling your money in a week, and then, well, almost tripling your money in a week, and then you're doing that every single week. You know the thing with the chessboard, right? With the 64 places on the chessboard. You put 1 grain of rice on the first one, and you double it for the next one, and you double it for the next one, and by the time you're halfway across the board, you have a globe worth of rice. If you keep doubling things over and over again, it gets huge. Not right away, but pretty pretty quick. So if you made this investment every week for 52 weeks, huge amounts of money, right? But this is how interest rates are calculated. Now, normally, what we have, let's get something more realistic so we can actually think in reasonable terms about this. Normally, we would have, say, a 10-year bond, right? And we would say, well, what is its annual rate of interest? We say, here's ignoring the coupon payments. Again, we're ignoring the coupon payments for now because life is hard, right? But suppose that over 10 years, we have, 100% return. We're doubling our money. So the interest rate, sort of the 10-year, interest rate 10-year is 100%. Double your money, right? But that's not how we think about it. We normally think about interest rate as the yearly interest rate, annual percentage rate, the APR, right? They always quote everything in terms of APR, and we want to compare interest rates sort of on the same scale. How much would I get if I did this investment for 1 year? The same way we did with my little investment, my little borrowing excursion, where we said, okay, this is what he's getting over a week, but what is he paying over a year period if he kept doing this? So clearly he's insane, right? And clearly I would default at the end, right? It doesn't matter how trustworthy and how nice I am, I'm just not going to have that kind of cash, so I can't keep doing this. But over a 10-year period, suppose this is the thing. So then we do the same thing. Right before we said, we look at it, total pain. We said, okay, we're going to invest it 52 times. And so we took it to the 52nd power. Here, we're making this kind of investment, but we're going to invest it 10 times. So this interest rate is, 1 plus I 10-year, your return has got to be equal to 1 plus I annual. Pretend like there's an investment that's this good that we could do over and over and over again. So we do it 10 times. Right? So pretend like there's an annual investment that has the same return as this. But instead of doing it in one big investment over 10 years, I'm going to do it as 10 small investments. I'm going to take my money, I'm going to buy this 1-year bond. At the end of the year, I'm going to take the cash from that. I'm going to reinvest it in another 1-year bond that has the same features. Do this over and over and over again. Now, this is not something I can actually do because such a bond is very likely not to exist. But we pretend like it did. If it did exist, what would be the feature of that bond? So, to do this, we would take the 10th root of this. So this is going to be taking the 10th root of both sides, 1 plus I 10-year to the 1/10th power is equal to 1 plus I annual. So I would just take the 10th power of that thing. So we can do that. 2 now it gives me something. So this is equal to 1.0717. So 7% interest rate. So this bond, this 10-year bond that is doubling its money over 10 years, we would say, okay, that's a 7% interest rate. Right? Getting 7% per year. Okay. So if somebody was writing this bond, like if they were actually doing it properly, like not properly, but in the conventional way, they would say, okay, I think this firm or this country is going to have to pay 7% return. Right? To borrow money, they're going to have to pay 7% return to the person that's loaning them. Right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a bond that's 10,000 euros for 10 years. The face value is 10,000. They're going to pay back 10,000 euros in 10 years. And every year, I'm going to give people 700 euros. The coupon payment will be 700 euros because that's 7% of 10,000. And then that coupon payment would have a value, right? We would be paying like a 7% return on holding this principal. And so the price would come out, if I guess the interest rate right, the price would come out to about 10,000 euros. And this is how they do it, right? They say, how much are they getting per year when we sort of pay that out in coupon payments? But just by convention, okay? Just not necessarily how they have to write it, but this is how it's done, and people get suspicious if you're doing it different. Okay?
Then there's no benefit to you in the bond because you're getting no profit on it.
Oh, you are, though. You're getting 700 a year.
But it's not just that you add that all up when you get the end of the year, you just end up with.
Yeah, but you're getting a 7% return on your investment. But it's just what you were expecting to get, right? So if you just had 10,000 and put it under your mattress, you'd be giving up the 700 every year. You'd still have 10,000 at the end, but you'd have missed all those 700s, right? So they just want the value of doing this thing to show up in the coupon payments rather than big principals at the end, by convention. Okay. Okay. Hey, that's all well and good, but we want to do one other thing, if we can. We have 1 plus the interest rate. We'll pretend like it's a 1-year bond, right? Pretend like it's a 1-year bond. And so we're going to have $10,000, say, minus the price over the price. Right. So this is 10,000 over P minus 1. And so the higher the price goes up, that means the interest rate goes down. And if the price goes down, that means the interest rate goes up. Right. Importantly, right, you're borrowing money, and you're going to pay back a certain amount. And the more money you get at the beginning, the price, the more money they give you, the lower the interest rate that you're paying. Right? If I had gotten 10 euros for this thing, that would have been a better deal for me than only getting 3. Right? Which means I'd be paying less interest. Right? Because all the goodness of the deal to me is all the interest the badness of the deal is the fact that I have to pay the interest. Right? So the higher the price, the more I'm getting, the better a deal it is. And for the person buying, the higher the price, obviously, the worse of a deal there is. They're loaning money. The more money they have to loan to get the payoff, the worse the deal is. So the lower the interest rate they're getting. Now, we normally just quote these things in interest rate because interest rate is something that we can compare across bonds. Right? This annual percentage rate we can compare across a 10-year bond, a 5-year bond, a 1-year bond, and that's fine. Right? So it's nice and comparable. We compute the annualized percentage interest rate. Whether it's longer or shorter, we just take the various power. Right? If it's 10-year bond, we take it to the 1/10 to find out the interest rate. If it's a 6-month bond, we pretend like you did that twice to get the annual percentage interest rate. And then we can compare those. What interest rate is IBM paying versus what interest rate is Ireland paying? Who's paying a higher interest rate on these loans? Right? And of course, the interest rate has something to do with how likely you think you're going to get paid back. If you think you're going to get paid back, you're more likely to be willing to loan money than if not. Okay. Okay, how are we? 44. Okay. I will leave that there and have a brief introduction, like very brief introduction to what we're going to do next. So we're going to come back to this a little bit next class. That took way longer than I thought, as everything always does. But next we're going to be, okay, do we have it? Yes, we're going to be talking about the ISLM model. And the ISLM model is building on stuff that we did last year, which I know most of you were here for last year, so you did that stuff. A few of you weren't, in case maybe you didn't. But I think even those of you who were here for it last year, it was last year, it was a whole year ago. Like, who remembers that stuff, right? And so it might be worth looking into it. So the things we're going to be building on are that Keynesian cross diagram and the money supply, money demand. And we're going to be putting those together in one model. So in our book, the stuff from before is chapter 3 and 4. Chapter 3 goes over the Keynesian cross diagram much quicker than it did in the principles book. And chapter 4 does money supply, money demand, again, much quicker than we did in the principles book. A little bit of math in both of them that we didn't have in principles book. However, if you don't have this book and you have a principles book, it's going to be the same stuff. It's not going to be different. There's no secret sauce or anything. And so you're perfectly happy with your old book if you've got it. You want a book, obviously, that covers ISLM, because otherwise, So in our book, it's chapter 5 that covers ISLM, but also last year's principles book covers ISLM. Some of them do, some of them don't. You might need an intermediate book to get ISLM. A lot of times, ISLM gets put into intermediate macro, like it is here, but you want a book with ISLM in it. Okay. So if you can't remember that stuff, which I would think would be normal, it would be wise to take a brief look, spend 20 minutes just paging through those things and remember what the heck was going on with those things. Okay, I will let you go.